Hey everybody, welcome back to What Next, and this week we got a good one for you. We have The Last Dragon. Now, if you guys haven't seen this one, this year they're actually celebrating its 40th anniversary. I think the actual 40th date was back in September. But again, if you guys have not seen this, please do yourself a favor and go ahead and see this. You cannot lose on this one. For those of you that have seen it, you know what it's all about. You know and love this movie just as probably much as I do. So let's jump into it. Now, I heard, doing some research on this one, that this was supposed to be a trilogy of sorts. There was a part 2 and part 3, kind of planned out, kind of leading into Leroy's character post this, everything that happened in the first one. That totally would have been interesting to see. At least one sequel to kind of give us a little aftermath on what happened. So let's jump into this one. So let's start off with the main character. So we have Leroy over here. Okay, Bruce Leroy, as everybody knows. So I'm curious as to how he kind of projects moving forward. Like, he's a good guy. He's pure at heart. Kind of at the end, he's beating the bad guy. He's got the girl. He realized that he's the master. He's got the glow. He decides. So it's like, what does he do now that he's the master, essentially? He's down in Harlem. Everybody knows that he's the man now. So I'm wondering what this new kind of fame brings to him and how he deals with it. Now, the martial arts community is huge where he's at. So, yeah, I'm just kind of curious as to how his character would have gone on into a sequel or maybe even a third movie. Does he have like a rise and then a downfall? Maybe kind of like he could lose everything for a second because he, maybe he gets a little, maybe kind of gets a little bit of an ego and then needs a check at the end or something. I see just in a sequel that something comes up that he wasn't suspecting, and he uses these new powers and these new skills to protect him and his family. Maybe some sort of new threat against, his family. Maybe new threat against his girl. We got Laura down there. I think he's a character that had so much more to show, and it's unfortunate that we never got to see how his character progressed past The Last Dragon. Same thing, so let's move on next to, we got Laura Charles. We all know Laura. She fell in love with Bruce Lee. She kicked some guy's butts, saved him. So, of course, she's like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. So at the end, she gets the guy. She's popular for what she does. So I'm curious in a part 2, or moving on with her, how her character kind of progresses. Like, she's kind of in charge of a music video show. So it's like, does she move on past that? Maybe she gets into acting, becomes an actress, something to where her fame is still growing, and then Leroy's over here having his own path. So I'm curious how those two mix and match, because she's probably end up being more famous than ever. Meanwhile, Leroy's this, he'll be famous in his world, but he's still going to be, her fame is here, and him is just, he's just this humble, pure at heart karate master that is, essentially her boyfriend at the time. So it's just, I would be really curious to see how those two intertwine with each other moving forward now. So now we got the main villain. We got Shonuff. Now, you guys know Shonuff. At the end, he kind of got his powers for a second, got the red glow. And then Leroy's, pure of heart powers come in and overpower his. Now, I don't think his powers are completely gone. I think he just got overpowered by Leroy. So I'm thinking in a sequel or what next for him. Clearly, he goes to jail for what happens. I'm just curious how long he's actually in there. And when he comes out, I think he's got vengeance on his mind. I think he sees red. I think he wants to go back at Leroy. I think he wants to go back at him hard. I think he's going to go back at him every way, shape, or form he could have. I think we would have seen a huge revenge upswing in Shonuff's character. Like, I thought it was bad in the first one. He's attacks his mom and dad's restaurant, breaks it up, vandalizes it, has his little brother beaten up. So I think in this one, he really steps it up a notch. So I think that would have been interesting to see, because I think he comes out of this, people are going to be like, this guy's, he's nothing now. They're going to think he's, he's nobody. he's still really good at martial arts, but I think he goes on a tear. Like, I think he's going to start fighting his way back up the ranks because he really needs to get back at Leroy for his own sake. So that would have been really interesting to see how Shonuff's character kind of progresses past this. Like, could have done a couple of scenes where maybe he's, in jail. Everybody realizes he loses his street cred. He's got to fight his way, being the tough guy in jail. Then gets out, wants his revenge, and kind of see how he plots, gets some people back with that. Maybe he gets some of his henchmen that were with him kind of come back and do some legwork before, kind of mess with Leroy before that. So yeah, I think that would have been a really good one to see. Like, I really wish we would have gotten a sequel on this one. That would have been great. And then after that, you got Eddie Arcadian over here, little guy with the gun. We all remember Eddie. He's the one that kind of set all this up. He had an interaction with Leroy. Leroy kicked the heck out of his henchmen too, and then he just wanted revenge on Leroy because this guy made him look foolish. So now I'm curious after this what happens, because he's going to be the same as Shonuff. Like, he is not going to like the fact that he got made to look the fool by Leroy. So now Leroy's out in the streets. He's great. He's doing fine. He's a kung fu master now. Everybody knows it. Everybody loves and respects him. I think you see Eddie kind of the same way as Shonuff, as he's probably in jail for, who knows, for a while. But I think the whole time he's in there, he's just plotting and scheming on how he's going to get his revenge on Laura, on Leroy, maybe even like something going after his family. Like, because Eddie did have some money and some connections, so he probably could have got a lot done in jail. So I think we would have seen Eddie kind of become maybe like the kingpin type figure, to where maybe him and Shonuff kind of reunites. Like, all right, what are we going to do? We have to get this kid. He humiliated both of us. Now nobody respects us, so we need to get our street cred back. So yeah, I really wish we could have just seen what would have happened with these guys, because I think there's a couple different avenues you could have gone with them. Or maybe Shonuff gets out and he wants revenge. Eddie gets out, he realizes that he was wrong, decides to help Leroy, or vice versa. Maybe Eddie gets out with a huge vengeance, wants to go after everybody that Leroy loves and respects, and Shonuff shows up and kind of helps him. Who knows? Maybe in a second or third one, him and Shonuff could have teamed up and could have kind of just taken over control of like whatever villains were heading that way. Because I think you would have had one or two other villains that would have shown up, especially now that Leroy's the man in Harlem. I think you would have seen an uprise of all these other kung fu guys showing up to test him. Like, I think Leroy was going to be constantly tested, mentally, physically, and spiritually, going into any type of sequels that we had. And then then you have all of our secondary characters that we love. Could have seen his brother Richie progress. Richie finally saw at the end that his brother is this cool guy that he means well and he's got a pure heart. So I'm curious where Richie goes. Maybe he starts to learn kung fu, kind of join like the family business with that, or he was always kind of like into music, kind of his own dude on the street. So it would have been curious to see how all that swung out. You had Leroy's friend Johnny. Johnny was hilarious. I think it'd have been funny to see a little more comedy out of Johnny. His skills would still just be getting better and better, but I found that dude hilarious all the time. Anytime he was on screen, Johnny's character was hilarious. So I still think you add in Johnny coming back in, and then you add in all of Leroy's his students. They're all kind of coming up. Everybody comes up with him.